That's where Sunrise continues, and this time we're doing a bit of politics here. Kogi State and Bayelsa State are going to have elections in the next few months. On Wednesday, both of them held governorship primaries ahead of the November 16 elections in Kogi State and another one in Kogi. The primary election ended abruptly. That's for PDP, ended abruptly. While the APC's own went on smoothly, the one for the PDP ended abruptly and held some time later. The incumbent in Kogi emerged winner of the APC's primary, so he's going to be running for a second term. And for the PDP, they had Musa Wada, who emerged as their governorship candidate. In Bayelsa State, Senator Doye Dewi emerged as the PDP's governorship candidate, and David Leon emerged as the governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress. In the build-up to those primaries, and even after the primaries, there have been all sorts of back and forth and all of that, the intrigues and all of that. Would you say those primaries held as they should be? There were some court cases, direct or indirect. Some people went to court, some didn't go to court. But at the end of the day, the two parties have their candidates. The other parties, I think, are still working on their own primaries. All the other parties in the states are contesting for these elections. So it's not just about the PDP and APC. Other parties are also contesting as well. But let's look at what the situation is like in the build-up to these two elections in these two states. To help us look into this, we have Dr. Biodun Adeni, who's a lecturer in Mass Communication Department, Bayes University, Abuja. Dr. Adeni, thank you for joining us. Mr. Wale Oluwade is a political analyst, also in Abuja. Thank you, gentlemen. And here in Lagos, we have Tunde Kolawole, Barrister Tunde Kolawole, public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let me start with you, Mr. Adeni. How would you describe the primaries that we've heard about so far in Kogi and Bayelsa? Would you say the candidates or the different parties involved have conducted themselves effectively? Are there lessons that we can draw from this going forward?
I wouldn't say that we've seen any serious difference from the pattern, from the particularity that we often observe in our political process. We still had a situation where, scores of candidates still came out to contest, for a position that is just meant for one person, one or two persons. The fact that we are having a mass of contestants still speak volumes about what we make about political contestation in this country. It's a shame that we still see it as one sure way to sudden stupendous wealth. We undermine the fact of service, the fact of coming to serve a fatherland and being the harbinger, being the conveyor belt of the good things that the people need. And that's why you see people being more vociferous, coming out in mass to desiring to contest for one or two positions. But be that as it may, it's okay that the parties have gotten up to this stage, and it's okay, they are very well aware of INEC's rules, which says that by the end of Monday, on or before Monday, nominations should close through the submission of candidates that have emerged victorious. It's all right also for us to expect that INEC will learn lessons, the lessons they have learned from the downsides of the general election. They will use it to improve on this off-season, off-cycle election, which Kogi and Bayelsa elections are. Okay, and it's also okay to say that politicians should also learn from the downsides of the general elections to improve on their conduct in these micro-elections that Kogi and Bayelsa elections are. It's important for us to keep learning in the process so that we'll not just be sitting in a position in the guise of developing our democracy. It's important for us to look at the downsides of the past, the mistakes of the past, and use it to improve on future elections. Kogi and Bayelsa elections, two among the many off-season, off-cycle elections that we have, are good test cases for us, to prepare again for the next round of general elections. We need to be learning, and as we are learning, we need to be improving. But if we are not improving, if we are not learning anything, it's just going to be shameful that we are moving around in circles. And that's not the kind of thing we need to grow our nascent, our fragile democracy in no time.
Dr. Adeni talked about the fact that one of the tick-off, I think, things that are, well, are not tasting very nice in the mouth is the fact that there are plenty of contestants gunning for just one ticket. That thing that everybody looks like, okay, political office is the avenue to plenty of wealth. It looks like that's what everybody's gunning for, not necessarily service. Do you agree with him?
Is that me, Neota?
Yes, Mr. Oluwade.
Okay, thank you for having me. I think these two off-season elections bring to fore again the challenge of nation building, and as well as the challenge of development that Nigeria, has faced, over the decades. Now, why do I say so? In a democracy such as we claim that we're practicing, the vehicle that brings you into political office is the political party. Now, what is the role of the political party in presenting candidates? How do you go about that? You set up a process that is rigorous, so that at the end of that process, the best candidates, emerge. The best of the aspirants emerge eventually as a candidate. Now, in all fairness and honesty, would we say that we have seen a rigorous process that threw up both the candidates of the APC and the PDP, or even the SDP, or whatever other party? And the answer is a big no. And so that brings me back to where I started from, the challenge of nation building and the challenge of development that Nigeria is confronted with. I mean, what are we faced with today? The poverty capital of the world. You have 100 million, thereabout number of people, living in multi-dimensional, poverty. And then you have insecurity practically, overrunning, the nation, as it were. And I mean, I've argued in different platforms, that where actual governance, real development takes place is at the states and the local government. So if you're going to have actual development and governance take place at the states and local government, what kinds of people should man those two arms, of government? So you cannot just have any kind of persons emerge from a political party, as candidates for a high office as that of a governor. Because the individuals, that let's look at the incumbent in APC, the incumbent governor. What has been his the result of his stewardship in the last 3 years plus? I mean, I'm not from Kogi State, but is it the outstanding salaries, 38 months or 40 months or thereabout? Is it the level of insecurity in Kogi State? Is it the deplorable infrastructure development in Kogi State? The list goes on. And then the candidate of the PDP, Musa Wada, absolutely from nowhere. I never heard of him until, he emerged on Wednesday or Thursday as the candidate of the PDP. Now, if a political party is going to throw up a candidate, you would expect at the very least that all the aspirants, contending for this ticket, would line up in a debate and present, their vision, espouse your vision, tell the electorate, what do you have to offer? To introduce yourself to the people that are going to vote, the electorate. Let them meet you. Let them know you. What is your plan? What do you have to offer? What are your developmental vision? What are your aspirations for the people? How do you solve unemployment? How do you solve insecurity? How do you tackle educational crisis, the healthcare crisis? How do you solve all of that? We didn't see any of this take place, and then it was all about money. It was all about who can outspend, the other in the so-called primaries. I think it was a sham. I do not have confidence in this so-called exercise. It's just, we're just going around in circles. I think it's just more of the same. Even if the issue with the INEC is still there, how do you even guarantee free and fair election in this kind of atmosphere where it's all about winner takes all? It's all about who can outspend the other. It's all about coming to office, like Dr. Adeni said. It's like, getting the spoils of war. I haven't gone through all of this, you get into the office, slam dunk, the treasury is open to you, so I'm not particularly excited about this whole process. I think it's a sham.
Thank you, Mr. Oluwade. Thank you. Mr. Kalawole, it's often been said in our politics that we do need credible internal processes that will throw up the people who are going to represent those parties. Now, in these primaries, did you see that in evidence?
Well, let me say very clearly that our departure point should be the constitution and of the respective political parties, and whatever guidelines that the political parties has brought out to guide the activities of those who are interested in the primaries and those who are likely to be voting for them. And of course, we also have the constitution which prescribes that when parties want to engage in primaries or in the election of their leaders and what have you, they must ensure that due processes take place. They must ensure that the process is democratic. They must also abide by their own rules and regulations, and that they must allow a level playing ground for who may ever be interested in any of those offices to really exercise pursue their ambition. But too many times you find out that those things are never observed. And because they are never observed by the party themselves or the leadership of the parties and all that, you find out that the candidate themselves find it really difficult to be able to key into those things. And more importantly, too, I think, besides blaming the respective candidate and then the political parties, I think INEC also have its own share of the blame. For me, there isn't too many problems with a multitude of people coming out and say, look, I want to be governor of Kogi, say I want to be governor of Bayelsa, says and all that. If the ambition is informed by a kind of patriotic, altruistic, and selfless perspective. But the challenge we have always had is that...
Those words are anathema to what we're talking
about. Exactly. Because sometimes the vibrancy of a democracy can also be measured by the political actors, by the number of people who are interested. If the democracy is not vibrant and all that, the chances are that too many times people will go to sleep and say, look, why do I have to bother myself with what is happening in some of those places? I mentioned INEC, and then I said INEC should partly be responsible. Why do I say this? I have noticed since we've been in this democracy for about 20 years now, INEC has always concentrated basically on just conducting elections. Elections. But even when you look at the Constitution, the powers that is conferred on NITA with regard to regulating the activity of political party is very, very enormous. So that it goes beyond just conducting periodic election. I give you an example. Up till now, you hardly can go to any of these political parties and punch the computer or say, look, bring out your books. I want to know the number of members that you have, where they are located and what have you. I want to know where you get your sources of finance from and what have you. I want to know who are those making the biggest contributions to some of these primaries that you want to conduct. Except we are able to regulate those areas, except we are able to make those places very, very transparent. It will be difficult to organize the kind of free and fair and credible party primary that you're talking about. Largely because you find out it is the governors and those who hold elective offices that are holding the purses and financing the activity of the political parties, and also the godfathers. And once the godfather continue to finance the political parties, we don't help the political party to organize themselves to be able to be self-financing, not to depend on anybody for their sources of funding and all that, not to depend on the governors for whatever they need to be able to hold party primaries and all that. We're going to continue to have this kind of challenges.
What does the Constitution say about that?
Just hold on. You'll answer that when we come back from this break.
Okay.
Thank you for staying with us. Our closing moment on this segment. Mr. Kolawole, Lewa asked you a question that you're going to answer about the Constitution.
About what the Constitution says about some of these...
especially raising money for political parties and money spent by candidates seeking office.
Well, what the Constitution emphatically says that the party should be self-financing. And it frowns at people taking money from outside and then from any godfather dominating any of these political parties as financier.
Well, nobody's listening.
Nobody's listening. And I think that should ensure compliance with all these guidelines and the Constitution and all that. Has always turned a blind eye to those activities of the politician. And except we look at those areas, especially we fine-tune and ensure that people obey laws with regard to their finances and how they conduct party affairs and all that, we're never going to get out of the woods with regard to having free and fair primary, because that is where the whole problem lies. That's the internal democracy. It's not there. And until we're able to ensure internal democracy, we can never be having free and fair primaries.
Okay.
All the crises that we have in Kogi and all that is similarly godfathers, and then the governor want to return at all costs,
All right.
even where they have not performed.
Gentlemen in Abuja, we are winding closing moments here, so you have just about 30 to 40 seconds each to weigh in on this. The way forward now that we have these staggered elections. Let me begin with you, Dr. Adeni.
I think very well that we shouldn't just be obsessed about the electoral process. We also need to be concerned about the values around the election, you know. How well do we want to continue to commodify our electionary process? You know, how well do we want to prioritize materialism and winner and the fact of somebody being a moneyed person, you know, when an election is characterized with the fact of being rich alone, where somebody who is wealthy, somebody who has a deep pocket is only the person that is more likely to win an election, it doesn't speak well of our kind of value, of the kind of value we subscribe to. It's okay that INEC is doing its job religiously, but it's also okay that agencies begin to shift focus to not just the electionary process, but the values around the election. The job is not essentially that of INEC. NOA has to be responsible as well. The Information Ministry has to be responsible as well. You know, so we need a conflation of efforts on the part of the agencies so that we begin to sensitize our people away from material politics, away from the commodification of an electionary process like we see in other parts of the world. Of course, we see what is happening in the US at the moment, like my colleagues and I were saying a while ago. Election is going to happen next year, but campaigns have already started, which is to say that it's not just about materialism, it's not about money, it's not about commodification, it's also about issues. You know, our subscription to issue-oriented politics in this country is still far from the mark. We need to close this bridge. We need to be focused ahead of not just the off-season F-cycle elections that we are still to have, but the main general election coming up in 2023. That's my take, really.
All right, Mr. Oluwade. Closing moment.
Yeah,
Your closing moment.
you know, one of the major fallouts of the general elections earlier on in the year, you know, was the non-signing by the president of the Electoral Act, the amended Electoral Act. You know, so I mean, I would expect that, you know, all hands must be on deck to get the Electoral Act as amended, you know, passed into law. You know, because when they go into general the elections proper in November, I think, you know, one of the major, you know, areas of abuse is when collation begins from the local governments, you know, to the state collation center. You know, if that act is not signed, so that there's provision, the provision for electronic transmission of results becomes law, then you still give room, you know, for merchants, you know, of electoral banditry, you know, to carry out, you know, their enterprise, you know. So we need to get that, you know, sorted out, and also to appeal, you know, to the candidates, you know, that it's not do or die. You are offering yourself for service, you know. So if you don't get it, you know, you wait another time. You know, it's not do or die. People don't have to die. Nobody's life is worth, you know, your ambition. You know, you don't have to shed blood, you know, for your own ambition. You know, that's what I think we should focus on going forward.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Abiodun Adeni, lecturer, Mass Communication Department, Bayes University. Mr. Wale Oluwade, political analyst, thank you joining us from our Abuja studio. And Tunde Kolaole, political affairs analyst here in Lagos. Thank you, gentlemen.
For having me.
Thank you. And just before we go, Oluwatosun Alebiosu says, until that time when a holistic electoral reform and constitution amendment is carried out that includes removing the power to choose the INEC chairman from the presidency, we will continue to move in cycles of political failure leading to a failed nation. That's Oluwatosun Alebiosu. Okay, Sunrise, we're back for the home stretch. Please join us in a moment.